One of the greatest solutions for my emotional healing, and at the same time, one of the hardest to implement, was boundary setting. It took a while for me to figure out how to say no, when, and how to maintain that no. But once I did, I'm telling you, it was like night and day. My emotional healing just took a huge leap forward when I learned to implement boundaries. Do you want to achieve your goals, but anxiety is tripping you up? Like to keep those fun weekend plans, but depression has you canceling again? Hey, I'm Lori, dog mom, lover of nature, and hygge enthusiast. Positive psychology skills help me overcome chronic severe PTSD. If you're ready to learn how to overcome your anxiety and depression and rediscover happiness and purpose in life, then get your cozy on and let's get started. Hello, my friend, and welcome back to Practical Solutions for PTSD. Today, I want to encourage you to help participate in the podcast and get the word out there. You can do this by liking, subscribing, and biggest thing you can do is to post a review on the podcast. And so to help encourage that, I want to read at least one review a month. I may do more. We'll see how it goes. But today, I'm going to read a review from Micaiah Gray. She wrote, "I love how everything Lori shares on here is simple, practical, and encouraging. I particularly love the episode on gratitude healing trauma. You took one of my favorite topics to talk about and learn about and put a spin on it. I truly had never heard it put that way, and that's such a gift to be able to see things from another perspective. God bless you and your work of helping us heal PTSD and improve mental health." And thank you, Micaiah, for your review. It's really encouraging to me, but it also raises awareness of the podcast and helps other people like you listeners to be able to find it and gain benefit from it. So thank you in advance for your reviews. I really appreciate it. And now let's get started on the podcast. One of the single greatest things that I learned in my healing process was setting boundaries. This was something, it took me a while to learn it. My poor counselor talked to me for quite a while before I finally understood what the benefits of setting boundaries and how they could help me. And the fact that it wasn't just me that it was helping, but the people around me, the people that I cared about. Me setting boundaries helped them. That was probably one of my biggest surprises, was how much it helped on both sides of the relationship equation. But it was really hard for me to get past some of the mental blocks that I had in setting boundaries. And looking back at it now through a lens of, looking back, 2020 vision type thing, I began to understand some of the reasons why setting boundaries was so hard for me initially. And a lot of this is because of how my nervous system had been conditioned to view boundaries. Some of this due to the PTSD, some of it due to personality quirks or the raising and cultural influences, chronic guilt or whatever that could be. And then there's some other things that can play into that. So today we're going to talk about the fact that boundaries are not mean. It's not selfish. They're actually medicine for your nervous system, and they are there to help and support your relationships. But if you've had PTSD and you're dealing with anxiety symptoms, seasonal depression, or chronic guilt, any of these, and if you've tried to set a boundary and your chest tightens, your brain is screaming, no, this is dangerous, this is selfish, you can't do this, stop. You're not broken. It's not something where you're just not seeing the benefits. You're not overreacting to a situation. This is where your nervous system has actually been conditioned through survival of other circumstances in your past. And so for some people, boundaries like this instinctively feel empowering. And I will tell you that once I got past some of the barriers to setting boundaries and started doing that, I totally get that. I totally get why boundaries are empowering. But if you're not there yet, it's completely normal and it's understandable, because for trauma-impacted nervous system, boundaries can feel morally wrong or emotionally risky or physically unsafe. So today we're going to talk about why boundaries feel threatening to your nervous system, for one that's already on edge, and why boundaries are actually one of the most effective ways to reduce hypervigilance, your anxiety symptoms, and emotional exhaustion. They aren't personality traits. It's something you can learn. This is a skill that you can learn. and they're fantastic nervous system interventions. So it's something you definitely want to invest some time in learning because they are hugely beneficial for you. So why is it that people that are dealing with PTSD or chronic anxiety, why do they feel like boundaries are not natural, neutral, or healthy? Why do they feel like they're risky? It's because boundaries in the past have cost you something. You've learned before that saying no led to punishment, to withdrawal, to escalation of a situation. Or maybe you have always been taught that having needs of your own was a conflict or it brought around guilt. Maybe staying agreeable kept you safer, calmer, or more connected to the people around you. So when you've experienced that in the past, your nervous system made a rule. Boundaries are unsafe. So when you try to set them now, your body doesn't feel confident. Your body's feeling exposed. This is why boundaries can trigger panic, guilt, freezing, or the urge to explain everything, to soften the boundaries or to undo what you just said. Because of what you've come through in the past and the fact that they left you feeling very unsafe and unguarded. Your nervous system is trying to protect you using old information. It doesn't mean that boundaries are wrong. This just means that your body needs to update information to the present state. So your nervous system doesn't evaluate logic or intent. It evaluates patterns. So even if the person that you've set the boundary with now is a safe person, as far as you know, you've never had issues with them, your body remembers earlier moments when drawing boundaries or creating limits led to danger, disconnection, or emotional fallout. For anxiety, that could look like a catastrophic thinking. For guilt-heavy systems, it can feel like you've done something bad. For PTSD, it could feel like rejection or abandonment is imminent. But boundaries are not rejection. And this is a big thing, a big truth I had to learn. Boundaries are not rejection. They're information about where your capacity ends. And for trauma-impacted nervous system, clarity can be calming. So understanding that, okay, this is how much I can handle and I can't do anything else. And when your system begins to understand that you're going to respect those boundaries, it begins to take some of that decision fatigue and anxiety out of the equation and can allow your system to heal because it begins to feel like it's in a safe space, at least for those micro moments. So boundaries can actually reduce your PTSD, your anxiety systems, and your emotional exhaustion. Because PTSD and anxiety aren't just about the past. Now, obviously, post-traumatic stress syndrome, it has to do with the past event, right? Something that happened to you that is causing anxiety and stress in the present moment. But this is something that you are living in the present moment. This is an issue that your body is dealing with today. And your body expects too much to happen next. So if you're in a situation in a relationship where you're trying to draw a boundary and that has resulted in negative fallout in the past, when you go to do it today, it's going to cause anxiety that may feel misplaced because it's a different person that is relatively safe, but you're remembering what happened in the past and it's causing present day anxiety. And hypervigilance comes from unpredictability. So you don't know what's going to happen. You're constantly waiting for that other shoe to drop. And this causes emotional exhaustion because you're constantly monitoring, waiting for that shoe to drop. You're looking for signs that it's about to drop. And then if you add on top of that your seasonal depression, if you're dealing with seasonal depression, this includes lower energy, slower processing, less resilience. In a situation that may be identical to what it was 6 months ago, today is causing you additional stress because your resources are lower. So setting boundaries can help with all of this, can help you reduce that PTSD, those anxiety system and exhaustion. And there's 3 important things it does for you that helps with that. 1, setting boundaries reduces decision fatigue because you've made the decision in advance. It's not something you have to think through in every circumstance because you've already drawn the line. A good example of this is for those of you that go to work and get called on to work late periodically. If you draw the boundary ahead of time that I will only stay late 1 day a week, the decision is made. If you're asked to stay late 2 days a week, what happens? You say no. The decision was already made. So it decreases that decision fatigue. And your brain doesn't have to constantly assess the obligation, the threat, or the guilt behind that because you've already laid down a boundary. Second, boundaries increase predictability. So your nervous system understands, hey, this is the boundary that we set. We're only going to be staying late 1 night a week at work. That's it. The rest of the time we're going home on time. And so your nervous system understands that. And when it gets close to quitting time, if you've already stayed late 1 day that week, it knows that when I get to 5 o'clock, I'm going home, or whatever your cutoff time is. It knows that. And so it's not having to second guess or wonder what's coming around the corner because your system already knows 5 o'clock is the cutoff time and we can relax and start, healing. So third, boundaries build self-trust. And I know this may sound a little weird when you hear it the first time or a couple times, but each time you honor your own body's boundaries, your own capacity, your body begins to learn things. Your nervous system begins to respond to that and understand that you are going to protect yourself and that you're going to allow yourself to heal and have that time to heal, that space to heal. And it will begin to relax and unwind and do just exactly that. It will start healing in those moments. And that lesson alone can soften anxiety and reduce the need to stay on high alert. So 3 things: it reduces decision fatigue, boundaries increase predictability, and third, they build self-trust. So boundaries, what are boundaries and what are they not? Boundaries are not punishment. So this is not something that, you get in a fight with someone or an argument and you give them the silent treatment and you're calling it a boundary. That's not a boundary. That's emotional manipulation. Or it can be. I need to put it that way. It can be emotional manipulation. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They're not, if you don't do this, I'm not going to do this, or you do this, or what? No, not ultimatums. They're not emotional walls that you're building around yourself to keep people out. Boundaries are choices that you make about your behavior, your time, and your energy. And this matters especially for the guilt-heavy nervous system. For people that struggle with guilt for setting boundaries, for whatever reason, a lot of it, at least for me, came down to feeling like I was being selfish. Understanding that this has nothing to do with it. You don't need to explain, justify, or convince anyone for a boundary to be valid. In fact, over-explaining can often be a trauma response. It is not a requirement for a boundary. Now, you do want to communicate them so that they understand and can know what to expect from you, but you don't have to go into gory details about them. So boundaries are not punishment. They're not ultimatums. They're not emotional walls. They are choices that you are making and how you are spending your resources, your time and your energy, and what your behaviors are going to be. That's what boundaries are. Now, when you're looking at this, especially if you have a negative response to boundaries, or if you're brand new to it, either one, small boundaries are going to work best. You don't want to okay, this is a situation that is really tough and really hard, and I'm going to set a hard boundary that's going to be a dramatic change, and we're going to start there. It's hard to start there because your body is resisting the entire way. And it's a huge and difficult one to set. And when you run into problems, it's going to reinforce that negative feeling about boundaries. So it is much better to start with micro boundaries. And this begins to slowly and safely retrain your nervous system that boundaries are there to protect you. So you want to do something small, quiet, and low drama. And so a lot of this is probably going to be boundaries set with yourself first. This is going to be really simple things. And you could teach your body that when there's a boundary, it's a safe space, that you're creating safe space for yourself and your nervous system before asking it to tolerate the discomfort of setting boundaries with others. So here's an idea of just a small micro boundary that you can try this week. Without confrontation or fallout, just a simple thing that you can set for yourself. And that is this is just an example, but you can make a decision to pause before responding. So if you're asked to stay late at work and you haven't yet set the boundary that you're only going to stay one day a week, and this is a consistent habit where you're always being asked to stay late at work, maybe you can start with just pausing before you respond. Instead of immediately saying, yes, I'll stay, however late we need to stay, I'll stay. Instead of jumping straight to the yes, maybe just pause for a minute. And you may still say yes, but you're pausing for a moment to think about it. So you're starting to break that automatic yes that comes out of your mouth every single time. So you don't have to explain. You're not trying to come up with whatever. You're just pausing to think for a moment. Maybe it could go something like this. Let me check and get back to you. Or you could just simply take a breath and be quiet for a second before you're responding. And it interrupts that reflex that you have to appease and to give in to people and to keep the peace. It gives your nervous system space to assess capacity. So maybe that pause is just, a self-check. Can I do this? No, I can't, so I'm going to walk away. Or yes, I can. Or you just begin to recognize, if you're doing the micro boundary, maybe it's just a pause enough to recognize what this is going to cost your emotional and nervous system. This is especially important if you're having a low energy day or a high anxiety day, because it gives you just a moment to try to assess where you are at that moment and what this ask is going to cost you. So even just setting that tiny pause boundary, it's a boundary, and it's a really good one. It's a great place to start because it allows you to take a little bit of time. Now, when you set a boundary, especially if you have negative responses to them, be prepared for the negative feelings to come afterwards. If you set a boundary and you feel guilty, anxious, low, or shaky, that does not mean you did something wrong. It just means that your nervous system is recalibrating and relearning what it means to set boundaries. So guilt is often the echo of an old survival role, not evidence of harm. So just take a moment and take a breath. You can even reassess if you want to. It's like, am I harming anybody by doing this? Am I morally correct? Whatever that could be. But just try with those little tiny micro boundaries at first. So discomfort does not necessarily equal danger. And you could take a bit to assess that, but it doesn't necessarily equal danger. Once you've decided to set a boundary and you've assessed it, this is everything's okay, stick with it. Just stick with it. Even if it's just the micro boundary we talked about of pausing, stick with it and do that. Provide the support that your body needs. And eventually the relief will kick in and you'll start feeling a difference. I know when I first started setting boundaries, it caused me a lot of anxiety. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had to get to the place I was willing to accept whatever happened, whatever the fallout was, because I knew I had to set them for my own self-preservation. And turns out the fallout was minimal and the benefits were ginormous on both sides. So again, just a reminder, boundaries are not mean. They are not selfish. They're actually medicine for your nervous system that has been overexposed, overstimulated, or carrying too much for too long. And you don't need perfect boundaries. Just set some small ones and work on it. And repeat the ones that honor your capacity, especially during anxious season or low light moments or the seasonal depression months. Just set those, respect them, do tiny ones, and you can start building on those. So healing isn't about being tougher on yourself. It's about becoming safer with yourself, making sure that your nervous system knows it can trust you, building self-trust. So try the pause this week. Just for a moment, pause before you say yes to whatever. You may still say yes, and that's okay, but just take a moment to pause. And notice what shifts inside of you when you do that. Just take a minute and think about it. And we'll see you back here next time. A quick reminder to like, share, review, subscribe to the podcast, and help get the word out there for others to find out about it so they too can benefit from practical solutions for PTSD. Hey, my friend, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you please take 30 seconds and share it with someone you know who may be struggling with depression and anxiety? Also, would you please leave a quick review for the show? Knowing how this podcast is helping you fills my heart with so much joy, and it motivates me for future episodes. For now, it's time for Sam and I to head outside to enjoy some sunshine and fresh air. We'll see you back here on Tuesdays and Thursdays for more great episodes.